Joining us now live from Washington, D.C., Corey Lewandowski. As you know, Corey Lewandowski engineered the Donald Trump for President campaign, won him the nomination. And Corey Lewandowski, also the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, Let Trump Be Trump and Trump's Enemies, both must-reads. And he is joining us now. He's going to go back now and testify to Congress again, spend another $150,000. Maybe he should hire Bill Stanley as his lawyer.
I'm available.
Right, because you did do the you did defend Paula Jones.
Yes.
Corey Lewandowski, you're live on the John Fredericks Show. You're here with Republican Senator from South Side in Virginia, Bill Stanley. Corey, great to have you with us.
Well, thanks for having me back. And, John, like Nostradamus, I predicted that the ambassador of the UK would not be in his job for much longer yesterday. And as we've seen today, he will be departing the United States.
It took 2 days, and you did predict it. You did it on TV, and you did on my show last week and said he wouldn't be long for this world after the ridiculous comments he made. How does this affect the relationship now between the Trump administration and Theresa May and her administration, Corey?
Well, John, as you know, Theresa May is going to be departing as the prime minister in approximately 2 weeks, and the odds-on favorite are Boris Johnson to take over that position. That selection process is underway, will be soon, and the ambassador knew that if Boris were to be successful in 2 weeks, he'd be out of a job anyways, and so he resigned to save some face. And look, I did some television yesterday on this, John, and I unfortunately did some British television on this, and they were appalled by the president's reaction. I said, excuse me, can you imagine for 1 second if our ambassador to the United States, Woody Johnson, said the same things about the Queen or about the Prime Minister? What would your reaction be? And, they don't like when you call them out on their own television channels too much, and so they thanked me very kindly for coming on and then asked me to get off television, which I was perfectly fine with. But, the hypocrisy that they feign to have, that the president has to call these people out, and I want to remind your listeners, and they know this because they hear me every week, John, this president is the greatest counterpuncher that we've ever seen. He didn't start this fight, but he sure knew how to end it, and that's what his opponents in the primaries learned. That's what crooked Hillary learned, and now that's what the ambassador, or I guess we can call him the former ambassador to the United States from the UK, learned is don't start a fight with Donald Trump because he's going to end it and he's going to win.
Corey Lewandowski, now the witch hunt continues. You've already testified in front of Congress 2 times on the Mueller report. Now they're dragging you back again. You've been subpoenaed again, which is another, $100,000 for the lawyers in Washington, D.C. You've talked to them. What do they want from you now, Corey?
John, they want to perpetuate this narrative that somehow, under some circumstance, the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. It never happened. They want to perpetuate a narrative that Donald Trump obstructed justice. It never happened. They want to continue to talk about the fact that Donald Trump isn't a duly elected president. They can't get over this. They can't get past the fact that he won in such an overwhelming fashion, that he destroyed crooked Hillary, that he didn't make it to 270 electoral votes. He went past 300 electoral votes. And so they can't seem to wrap their minds around that. So they want to continue to bring people in like me and others who either worked on the campaign or in the White House to ask us questions about things that we have already answered. Look, I've already answered these questions on numerous occasions. But what I am looking forward to is the apology that Chairman Nadler is going to issue me and my family before the committee gets started for the way that we were treated the last time he had someone before his committee and couldn't remember what their name was. So I look forward to that apology. I should have had one by now, and I think that's the first thing I'm going to ask for from the committee when we get started.
Is that going to be in public or behind closed doors, Corey?
John, if it's my choice, I'd rather do it in public. You know that. Look, I hate the games because what happens, and I've seen this now on multiple occasions when I've testified behind closed doors, little Adam Schiff will go out and leak the conversation, or President Swalwell, as we like to call him, oh, wait, he's out of the race, right, would go out and leak the discussion, even though you're behind closed doors in a skiff space and it's supposed to all be, private. But they go out and leak the conversations because they get up halfway through the hearings. So for me, I want the American people to see exactly what their taxpaying dollars are going to, And the farce that this whole thing is, this whole notion that there was collusion or conspiracy or obstruction is so outrageous that all of these things should be directly on television so the American people can see just exactly what the Democrats are doing running our country from Congress.
Corey, what progress has been made by Attorney General Barr and Inspector General Horowitz on investigating the investigators Comey, McCabe? And look, we're here in Richmond, Virginia today. Senator Bill Stanley is with us. He's very aware of the whole McCabe's scandal with McAuliffe and his wife giving him what, Bill, $800,000?
Yeah, gave his wife to run against Dick Black
in 2015 when Hillary's thing was coming up. Where are we with that investigation?
Well, the truth is, John, we have not moved fast enough on this, and I respect Attorney General Barr and Inspector General Horowitz, but we have now been waiting since last March, a year ago March, when Andy McCabe received a criminal referral. The former deputy director of the FBI, who was fired, received a criminal referral for prosecution to the Department of Justice. That has not been acted on yet, and the additional work from the Inspector General's office has not come out yet. And I am anxious, and I think the American people deserve to know if additional crimes were committed by people like James Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and Bruce Orr and James Baker and that whole cast of characters at the FBI that use their badges and their guns to spy on Americans because they didn't like our politics. So I want the Inspector General's report to be thorough, but I also want it to be swift, because I think these people deserve to have their day in court, but the American people deserve to hold these people accountable for the crimes that they committed, not just against the president and the first family, but against all of the people who worked on that campaign whose lives were either financially destroyed or personally destroyed. Look at Carter Page and look at George Papadopoulos. These guys' lives were destroyed, and Carter Page was never accused of a crime, but they spied on the American that he is because they didn't like his association with the campaign, and that is a crime in this country. And I want Justice Roberts at the Supreme Court to look at the FISA review court to make sure that this never happens again. But more importantly, I want the Inspector General and the Attorney General to get this investigation out into the public so we can see exactly what transpired and exactly how high this whole farce went. I believe it went directly to the White House in the previous administration.
Directly to the White House as far as Stephanie Powers, Susan Rice, Valerie Jarrett, Joe Biden, Barack Obama. What are you saying?
John, I think it goes all the way to the top. Look, you don't have Comey and Clapper and Brennan,
Corey?
The three tops of the intelligence community in our country, investigating things without the explicit consent of people in that building. If that was the National Security Advisor who could have authorized that, or the Deputy National Security Advisor, or was Joe Biden and Barack Obama involved in that conversation? Do they authorize the use of unmasking of American citizens and push those people at the Department of Justice to go and apply for FISA applications to spy on Americans? That is not done in a vacuum. And what we now know, because we've received some of the emails from the State Department, is that when Christopher Steele showed up at the State Department and said he had dirt, that information was relayed to the FBI and said this is not a credible person. But Comey and Clapper and Brennan, the three people who were supposed to be tasked with making sure our election integrity was in place and that spying wasn't transpiring on us, they failed, and they were given explicit orders. And one of those three people, if not all of them, have some type of criminal liability for the damage that they did to the people of this country, and I want to see them held accountable. And I think that because they're weak, they will turn on each other, and we will ultimately find out who inside the previous administration authorized this, when it began, who authorized it, and who allowed it to continue to happen.
Do you believe it went all the way up to Barack Obama?
John, I just don't see how you have an investigation of this magnitude with the significant members of government resources being dedicated, the Director of National Intelligence, the head of the CIA, the head of the FBI, and Barack Obama doesn't know about it. How would a president not have been briefed on what is and was the largest intelligence gathering operation on American citizens probably since World War II? and it was on a presidential candidate, not just a person who's running for office, but now the Republican nominee. And ultimately, and we know this, the final FISA application was renewed after Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. So that stuff all began after he became the Republican nominee. There is no way that the president of the United States at the time, Barack Obama, did not know that this investigation was at least at the infantile stage, if not briefed completely, of every aspect of what was going on.
Incredible. We look forward to this, and hopefully it's going to come out very soon. I know they've put it off because Inspector General Horowitz has a reputation for being very thorough, and apparently found stuff he needs more time. That seems to be the conjecture in Washington. We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager for the Donald J. Trump for President campaign. He engineers victory. Best-selling New York Times author, 2 books, Let Trump Be Trump, Trump's Enemies. Must read if you follow the president and you're part of Trump Nation. Must read. Easiest way to do it, go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com. There's 2 icons there for both books. You just click on it, and then you can choose where you want to buy it. It's right there. It's easy to do. Corey Lewandowski with us. Corey, Jeffrey Epstein, indicted, in jail right now. Had a lot of friends. Corey Acosta, the labor secretary, involved now. People calling for him to resign because he gave a lenient term for him. This guy's bad news. You start reading the expose in the Miami newspaper, The Herald. Very thorough investigative report. This guy's bad news. A lot of people were around him. Anything going to come of this bad for...
John, let me say this. There is a special place in hell for people who are pedophiles and for people who prey on children. And if any of the public reports are true of the way he treated women, girls, young girls, 12, 13, 14 years old, and the things that he made them do because he was in a position of power, there is no crime, that there is no penalty, I think, that can be too egregious for this individual. This is the type of thing that brings me back to the days of public execution. And John, I don't say that lightly. This disgusts me. And anybody who is associated with this sick, disgusting individual, whether they were working for him, whether they condoned it, or whether they knew about it, should all be held accountable. And I don't know the details of what Alex Acosta, knew at the time he was working in Florida as the U.S. attorney down there, but it seems to be on its face that this was a fairly light sentence for the crimes that this person had been accused of and pled guilty to. And we have now seen, because that person doesn't seem to have been prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and I don't know the facts of the case, it seems now that he, from what we've seen from the Southern District of New York, they found additional pictures and evidence of pedophilia and child pornography. It just completely disgusts me. And I hope that if any of the things that Jeffrey Epstein has been accused of, if they are true, he never steps foot outside of jail for the rest of his life. I hope he has a violent death in that jail.
Well, that's pretty harsh words. I don't know what is going to happen. Look, I don't have enough detail, neither you, about what exactly Labor Secretary Acosta's role in it, but I think it's fair, and, I'm not a defender of the legacy lying fake news media, but I certainly think it's fair for that to be looked at, what exactly happened there, because on the surface of the average layman that are not lawyers, it looked like Epstein's sentence was really light for what he was alleged to have done and the plea bargain. So I'm kind of with you on that. Corey, let's get to Biden, the Joe Biden presidential campaign. Both you and I predicted he wouldn't be the nominee. It looks like that every day. What is going on with the Biden campaign? I mean, every day it gets worse.
Well, he's imploding. He looks every minute of 78 years old, right? He's now the average Joe Biden, except he made $15 million in the last 2 years, which I don't know about you, John, but that doesn't seem like the average Joe to me. Joe is out of touch with reality. We have predicted this. His campaign is in free fall. He is the Hillary Clinton of the 2020 election, which means, his argument has been he's the only person who can beat Donald Trump in the general election, but the fact is he's never going to make it through the primary. His campaign is tired. He is tired. He's trying to defend his relationship with segregists, but when he was in the U.S. Senate. But, we can talk about his time as the Vice President of the United States when he went and gave the eulogy to the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan in West Virginia. And that was when he was the Vice President of the United States, and he called him my boss. If you go back and you look at Joe Biden at the funeral of Robert Byrd from West Virginia, he said, my boss, Robert Byrd. And as we all know, he was a Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. And nobody's talking about that. Joe doesn't want to talk about those things. I will make the prediction, which we have made many times now, John, on your show. He will not be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. I don't think Joe Biden's going to make it past South Carolina at this point.
Well, I tell you what, that's even worse than Bannon, who was on the show the other day and said he wouldn't make it past Super Tuesday. I agree with you. I don't think he even gets to Super Tuesday. I don't think he gets out of South Carolina. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us. Always a pleasure to have you on. I'm sorry you have to go through more lawyers and get back in front of Congress, but do demand that apology from Nadler. Do that for us.
That I will do, I promise you, John. Thank you.